The vibration of the floor against the soles of your boots is the first thing that feels off. You've spent enough time on high-speed rail to know the subtle rhythm of the tracks, the way the car usually glides with a hum that's almost musical. But this isn't a hum, it's a low-frequency growl that rattles the ice in your glass and makes the window pane beside you shiver. You look out at the landscape, and the green fields of the countryside are no longer a blur. They're a smear of static. You glance at the digital speedometer mounted above the automatic doors at the end of the cabin. 485 kilometers per hour, then 490, then 500. This train is rated for 350. You say your drink down, the condensation slick on your palm, and stand up. Nobody else in the first-class cabin seems to notice. A businessman across the aisle is deep into a spreadsheet. A couple 3 rows down is sharing a pair of earbuds. They trust the machine. They trust the man in the cockpit. You, however, are paid not to trust anything you can't see with your own eyes. You move toward the front of the train, your gait steady despite the increasing sway of the floor. Your hand brushes the hidden holster at the small of your back. Just a precaution. Passing through the pressurized seal between car 1 and the locomotive unit, the sound changes. It's a roar now, the sheer force of the wind screaming against the aerodynamic nose of the train. You reach the heavy, reinforced door to the driver's cabin. You tap on the glass. No answer. You try the handle. It's locked from the inside, which is standard. But the small observation window is blocked by a lowered blind. Your internal alarm isn't just ringing now, it's screaming. You don't waste time with a second knock. You reach into your sleeve, producing a thin carbon fiber shim. You slide it into the electronic bypass port, a trick you learned in a damp basement in Berlin, and the magnetic lock gives a soft, defeated click. You shoulder the door open and step inside. The cockpit is cold. The air conditioning is blasting, but that's not why the hair on your arms is standing up. The driver's seat is empty. Not just empty, the harness is neatly buckled as if no one was ever there. The control yoke is moving on its own, twitching under the command of a remote bypass. On the primary heads-up display, big red block letters are flashing. Manual override disabled. You lunge toward the console, your fingers dancing over the emergency brake lever. You pull it. Nothing. It moves freely, disconnected from the hydraulic system. You try the secondary pneumatic backup. A hiss of air escapes, but the speed on the display doesn't budge. 515 kilometers per hour. The train is accelerating into a curve it was never designed to take. You grab the radio headset, switching to the emergency frequency. Central Command, this is Agent 7 on board Trans-Euro 901. We have a runaway. Cockpit is ghosted. Brakes are unresponsive. Do you copy? Static. Then a voice cuts through. Not the calm, professional tone of a dispatcher, but a cold, synthesized rasp that makes your jaw tighten. Hello, 7. We wondered if you'd noticed the change in pace. Look at the satellite feed on the secondary monitor. You look. A drone view map pops up. 5 miles ahead, where the tracks narrow into a deep mountain gorge, a massive industrial freight carrier has been derailed. It's sitting sideways across the tracks like a steel mountain. At your current speed, you'll hit it in less than 90 seconds. The engine is a kinetic bomb. The impact will trigger a thermal cascade. But don't worry, you won't feel a thing. The line goes dead. You have 85 seconds. You look at the diagnostic screen. The engine is hard-coded to maintain thrust until impact. You can't stop the head of the snake, but you can save the rest of the body. If you can reach the coupling between the locomotive and the first passenger car, you can decouple them. The engine will roar ahead into the collision, and the rest of the train, with its 300 unsuspecting passengers, will drift to a halt using its own independent friction brakes. But there's a catch. The electronic coupling is locked behind a physical safety pin that has to be pulled manually from the outside. You turn to leave the cockpit and stop. Standing in the doorway of the locomotive unit are 2 men. They aren't wearing conductor uniforms. They're wearing tactical vests, their faces masked by gray balaclavas. One holds a heavy glass-breaking tool. The other has a compact stun baton humming with blue energy. They aren't here to talk. You don't wait for them to move. You dive forward, using the momentum of the train's latest lurch to propel yourself forward. You catch the first man in the solar plexus with your shoulder, driving him back into the narrow corridor. The other man swings the baton, the arc of electricity missing your ear by an inch. You grab his wrist, twisting it until you hear the joint pop. and drive your elbow into the hinge of his jaw. He hits the wall hard, his eyes rolling back. The first attacker is back on his feet, reaching for a sidearm. You don't give him the chance. You sweep his leg, and as he falls, you grab the heavy fire extinguisher from the wall mount. A single focused strike to the side of his helmet sends him into a heap. You're breathing hard now, the adrenaline making the edges of your vision sharpen. You check your watch. 60 seconds. You sprint back through car 1. The passengers are starting to look up now. They can feel the tilt of the train, the way it's screaming through the turns. A child starts to cry. You don't stop to explain. You reach the rear vestibule of the first car, where the heavy accordion-style gangway connects the passenger section to the engine. You pull the emergency release for the floor hatch. It's meant for maintenance, a small metal plate that opens directly onto the coupling mechanism below. The wind that hits you is a physical wall. It's a deafening, freezing roar that tries to suck the air right out of your lungs. Below you, just inches from your feet, the blur of the gray track bed is a terrifying strobe light of speed. You drop to your knees, shielding your eyes from the dust and grit being kicked up. There it is, the heavy, rusted steel arm of the hitch. It's held in place by a massive locking pin, a piece of solid iron the size of your forearm. It's supposed to be moved by a hydraulic ram, but the ram has been jammed with a metal wedge. You reach down into the holding void. The wind tries to rip your arm out of its socket. You can feel the heat radiating from the wheels, a dry metallic warmth that smells like burning friction. You grab the pin. It won't move. You pull with everything you have, your muscles straining until they feel like they're going to snap. It's locked tight under the tension of the accelerating engine. You need to create a moment of slack. You need the engine to stop pulling for just a fraction of a second. You scramble back up and run to the engine side control panel in the gangway. There's a manual fuel cutoff valve behind a glass plate. You smash the glass with your fist, ignoring the sting, and crank the valve. It won't kill the engine permanently, the computer will overwrite it in seconds, but it will cause a momentary sputter. You dive back to the floor hatch. You wait. You feel it, the vibration of the train changes, the engine coughs, the tension on the coupling dips for a heartbeat. Now, you scream into the wind. You heave on the pin, it groans, a sound of metal screaming against metal that's louder than the wind. It slides an inch, 2 inches. Then, with a violent jerk that nearly throws you out of the hatch, it clears the housing. The effect is instantaneous. The massive steel arm of the engine hitch swings away, disappearing into the dark space ahead. The locomotive unit, freed from the weight of the 12 passenger cars, surges forward like a rocket. It pulls away with terrifying speed, leaving you behind. You're still kneeling over the open hatch, staring at the receding red lights of the engine. For a second, there's a strange, haunting silence. Just the sound of the wind and the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the passenger cars coasting on the rails. Then, the independent emergency brakes of the cars kick in. The wheels scream, sparks flying up through the floorboards as the friction pads bite into the steel. You're thrown forward, your head hitting the edge of the hatch. You see stars, a dull ache blooming behind your eyes, but you cling to the handle. You watch the horizon. 2 miles ahead, the mountain gorge lights up. It isn't the roar, it's a dull, heavy thump that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. A pillar of white light and orange smoke erupts into the sky, reflecting off the underside of the clouds. The engine has hit the blockage. The kinetic bomb has gone off, but it's miles away from the people behind you. The cars continue to slow. 100 kilometers per hour, 50, 20. Finally, with a long, dying hiss of air, the train comes to a complete stop. The silence is absolute. You pull yourself up, your limbs feeling like lead. You close the floor hatch and lock it. You walk back into the first-class cabin. The passengers are all standing now, looking out the windows at the smoke rising in the distance. They're confused, frightened, but they're breathing. The businessman who was working on his spreadsheet looks at you. He sees the grease on your hands, the tear in your sleeve, the way you're leaning against the seat for support. "What happened? Did we break down?" he asks, his voice trembling. You look at him, then out at the mountain where the fire is slowly dying down. You reach into your pocket, pull out a handkerchief, and wipe the soot from your forehead. "Just a technical glitch," you say, raspy but calm. "The ride's over. You might want to call for a bus." You don't wait for his response. You move toward the rear of the train, disappearing into the shadows of the next car before the first sirens start to wail in the distance. You have a radio to track, a rival agency to find, and the long walk home. But for now, the air is still, and the ground under your feet isn't moving. That's enough.